So as you can see, it's a little different setup here. We're on Instagram Live. This is the first time I've done something like this, and I'm delighted to be joined by, shall we call you Saul? Is that fair?
That's fair with me, brother. I'm happy with that.
Because I'm like, I don't know what his name is, so I don't. We Let's go with Saul, shall we?
That's how I go by. I like to keep the wrestling world and the professional world separate. But yes, of course, it is me, Soul, host of the Soul Sessions and the Soul Sessions Collection. I'm a Scottish interviewer. I particularly work with Bleeding Gums Wrestling. I've done stuff with PWR, which is a training school up in Fife. I've interviewed the likes of Donovan Dijak, Subculture, Flash Morgan Webster, Danny Luna, and Mark Andrews. I've done Bobby Fish. I've done Alan Angels. I've done Marty Skrull. I've done quite a array of characters, but I do like to focus on the Scottish scene most of the time.
Of course, and I'm a big, massive fan of the Scottish scene, so I'm excited to learn about all that. But before we do all that, we've got a little intro to play. Roll it. Would you say you're a busy man then?
Yeah, pretty damn busy. I mean, I think this year alone, including the second half of season 3 and my season 4, I've done 64 interviews.
Jesus.
I'm like to keep busy. I like to keep busy. If I've got the time, I'm going to use it.
Yeah, I mean, I've just hit 65 of my own interviews, so that's just them of overall, man. I mean, wow. I mean, that's impressive, let's be honest.
Yeah, so I mean, I started the show back in 2022, and since then, altogether, 163 episodes right now.
Wow, wow. Well, we'll talk about the Scottish scene later on, but let's obviously start, mate. How did it all begin for you? What was the driving force for you to get into, obviously, podcasting?
Oh wow! So this goes back quite a fair bit. So a lot of people are going to immediately think, "Oh, he got into wrestling as a kid. He probably grew up with it. Saw Rey Mysterio and thought, I like that. I want to become like that." And thought, "Nah, I can't do it. I'm going to become a podcaster." That's not the story, folks. I got into wrestling in 2019 when I was in my second year at university. Literally studying for something, and I was like, "I need something on the background. What do I need?" And it was a top 10 list of bloodiest wrestling matches. And I was like, all right, I've gone from criminal watch alongs, I've gone through this and that. I'll put this on. Why not? And it was seeing like those matches. And I remember specifically the match that stood in my mind was Eddie Guerrero versus JBL Judgment Day, where Eddie busts open like a fountain. Like, all right, okay, this is interesting. And after that, I'm a big fan of documentaries. So seeing stuff that covered like Bruiser Brody and stuff in the past, but it was really also two other things that really got me into was Dark Side of the Ring and Being the Elite.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was Dark Side of the Ring had just premiered at that point, and that's how I first learned of the Montreal Screwjob, which I'm sure people have heard about to death. But that was my real first introduction to it. Loved that whole history and learning about people of the past, and then obviously Being the Elite with Omega, the Bucks, Cody, Hangman, and Skrull, like that period as well. I thought was, oh, this is so entertaining. I want to watch this, and I did watch WWE for a fair bit. I actually watched it, So my first ever pay per view was the Royal Rumble 2020, where I was the Edge return, and I was like, oh, why is everyone reacting crazy for this guy with long hair and a big jacket? I don't get it. And then learning about who Edge was. Fair point, I understand. But my main wrestling butter is AEW. I can't adore AEW more than I already do. My first ever wrestling event was AEW Revolution back in Orlando, where it was MJF and Punk dog color match.
Wow.
That was a hell of an event. I loved that one so much. And yeah, and then originally I paired with a network called Wrestling Republic. That's where the Soul Sessions technically debuted. I was a writer for their news segment. I saw they had the YouTube stuff that had really nothing on it. And I was like, oh, I want to do stuff on it. So then I partnered with a guy called Robert Chaos. He does their Take It to the Table sort of debate discussion one. Our first ever topic was on day one, where Brock Lesnar beat Big E and 5 other people in a match that got announced like so many bloody times. And after that, I saw Wrestling Republic didn't really have a market for anything else. They just had the debate stuff. I seen that they had other people do stuff, then they come and go and leave, and I was like, there's not really anything for interviewing. I think I'm a good talker. And I said, well, can I start something up? And you're like, yeah, okay, sure. Started up something called the Soul Sessions, and that's pretty much the story of the beginning of me and this little program.
Yeah, the thing is, and I'm just thinking about it now as you said that. Do you remember what your first interview was like? Because I remember being absolutely nervous as hell.
So it was with a Chicago wrestler called Axel Rico, somebody who had featured on AW Dark, and that was so he was obviously international. Learning about the time differences was something that you really have to be prepared for because time can change like that. Yep. So I remember it was in here, different setup obviously, but it felt natural. It felt good. I'd really set up questions and gone through there, but it was very basic. It's not something I like to go and look on. It's like, oh, I've definitely got in better, thank God. But when I really jumped the shark, it's like, oh, your first interview was a Chicago independent wrestler. Then your second interview is EC3, and you're like, holy shit. Kind of jumped the gun there.
That's crazy, man. I mean, yeah, I remember my first one was with Sebastian Mercer from UKW, and you're exactly the same thing. You're having all these questions and stuff like that. And I'm thinking to myself, these are really, really basic. Do you know what I mean? And stuff like that. But you might agree with this, but as time obviously progresses with your interviews, your questions, I wouldn't say get more complex, but they get a bit more different. Is that fair?
Yeah, no. So before in the past, when I did interviews, I literally just looked at their page, take a screenshot, and then ask on Instagram and just ask about it. Now I do it now is I take screenshots of their Instagram page. So I know if they have a tagline, I go down their page as far as I can. I go work up in history routes, cage match as well. Blessed be above. It's AEW's preferred use of reviewing. I used cage match for like knowing about titles, random defenses, when the career started, if they've been in some random indie company that maybe nobody knows about, that might be defunct, to talk about that. So yeah, it's using that trifecta of cage match, Instagram, and their own profile. But also as well, it's sometimes not just talking about fully wrestling, because other people have other interests. They might have a moving interest. They might have a interest in gaming or other parts of it. And you want to capitalize on it because, just talking about what you do for work can get a bit boring. So you kind of diversify it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And obviously with the questions of you asking stuff like that, is there one question where you look back going, I'm curious what the answer is going to be? Because the one I always say is, why should fans go check you out? They're kind of like promoting themselves. And for some bizarre reason, it stumps them every time, and I don't know why.
So the question, it's a question I asked I didn't get an answer to because of reasons. But I remember when I had Bobby Fish on, I asked him about Punk and Brawl Out. I was like, oh, what are you? Because I know you called them a particular word. What's your thoughts on the situation? He was just like, I just no comment. I was like, that's fair, respectable. But I would have loved to know the answer to that, especially with how things turned out.
Dear. And that's the other thing as well is obviously you never know what answers. Have you ever had like any like questions where you've asked them and you can just tell they don't really want to answer it?
I feel like for a lot of people, it's probably like the general introductions. Like what I do with every guest, is I used to ask, oh, how did you get into wrestling? And that's so basic, but it's an introductory standpoint that a lot of people have to do to introduce it. So I put my own little twist on it, which is, every guest has a story. Every story has a beginning. How did your story begin as a wrestling fan? So it's the same question, but it's in a different terminology and a different way of presentation. So it's a general introductory point. And then if I had somebody on and say they were talking about, well, I got into it about the playground and watching Attitude Era, my favorite wrestler was Doink the Clown. So I could continue on my another question, but there's a question there in the waiting. Ask about Doink the Clown. Thoughts on scary clowns in a kid-friendly environment, or asking about how was it a gimmick maybe not in the right time period? How would a Doink the Clown gimmick work in a modern-day TNA or an AEW or maybe even a hardcore independent scene? So yeah, you ask the general introduction question, but you spin it in a way that it can give you maybe 6 other questions that you might have had prepared on your sheet.
Yeah, that's a nice little thing you said there and stuff like that, because I always like try and focus on the flow. So, for example, it's like starting in wrestling. Do you know what I mean? What's some of your highlights and stuff like that? Would you say for people listening who's not obviously doing the podcasting thing, would you say flow is really important when it comes to interviews?
Generally, yeah. Like if you were working on, say, if you were working on somebody and they were a Ring of Honor guy, right? You would work up until they get to Ring of Honor. So say if they did stuff before with, several UK promotions or they did a Japan tour, you would work its way up. So you go in a chronological event. You may want to immediately jump the gun, like, oh, you're a Ring of Honor World Champion. Let's talk about that immediately. But you could, but then you disrupt the flow when you go 10 years back in their careers. Like, oh, well, you started out in this random hall in Kirkcaldy. So where are we going there? But you generally want to have the flow of progression through time, usually. And I always like having people back on because I don't have to do the general introduction. It's immediately just into like, how you doing, bud? We've done this and that. You've been doing all this. Let's get some crazy talk on the way. So it's the fun part of it. But I generally do like the storytelling interviews in particular. Like if you look at the one I did with second appearance of Tate Mayfair's, was so fully, in it. Obviously going on with his feud with Eddie Dennis at Progress at the time. Progress even shared a few clips from that. It was a real good interview, and I really like those tense ones where it's. I don't want to say it's like a work or a shoot kind of thing because I don't feel like I'm worthy of saying that terminology. I'm just using it because that's what it is. I ain't in the business that much, but like when I had Hunter Sampson and Omar Mohammed on, we talked about obviously building this for a match. They had a Power Pro in their Truth or Dare 2 show, and I like that. I like the building of shows where it could just be an interview where one person talking to another and it's about their personal life and other bits and elements. But when you try and make a story around it, that's what I really like.
Yeah, absolutely. And you obviously did a show, which is one of someone obviously I interviewed as well, which is one of my favorites is the Riot Cabaret one. That was probably one of my favorite ones. And I saw, obviously you got the opportunity as well. What was that like?
Oh, right. So All In Weekend, the original All In, so 2023, right? Yeah, 2023. So again, this is so funny for me with the Soul Sessions. Like if I know it, like I know a lot of episodes connect in a weird way. So going back, I interviewed Harrison Leon. So Harrison Leon was the One Square champion at the time, and he wasn't the One Square champion at the time, but he introduced me to like One Square Academy, and that introduced me to Tony Sin. And Tony Sin was the One Square champion at the time. Harrison Leon beat him for the belt, and had him talk about that. It was like really cool, and I knew he really liked Judas. Obviously, Judas with Fozzy. Fozzy obviously performed that song. They were going to perform at All In Weekend that year. So I messaged him, like, oh, you're going to go to that? He's like, oh, no, I'm going to go to this promotion called Riot Cabaret because my friend or trainer, Tommy Kyle, is returning. And I was like, all right, okay. I kind of want to do other wrestling events because my mate wants to go see Barbie the next again day. So I want to get as much as wrestling as I can. And I saw Riot Cabaret. I looked at it and I was like, okay, is there any tickets left? There's like 3 tickets left. Right, screw it. I know the London Underground system. It's not Scotland where I can walk it. I'll live. Booked a ticket, went to it, and I genuinely, Riot Cabaret was my favorite show of that weekend, and this weekend as well. When I went to Twas a Night, not Twas a Night Wrestling, All Singing, All Dancing. Like Riot Cabaret is amazing, and seeing that show there, obviously, and witnessing it was just so much fun, and was probably the proper time that I've met guests in person that weren't in Scotland. Like I met Sky O'Shure, Tig, Adonis Payne, obviously who's now Chris Aries. And just meeting all this person was just a real humble moment as well. I also got to meet Session Moth Martina in person as well. And seeing what Riot Cabaret had built, I was so like, oh, this is just awesome. So a year down the line, I knew the show was coming up. And I was like, do I try it? Okay, who are the owners? It's not really said on the page. Let's look around pages. Oh, there's a collaborative post with James Lawrence. All right, I'll message James. Didn't expect anything of it. Got a message back from him. We can do something. Let's do it. And then we had the interview come out. The interview came out during All In Weekend. Met James in person at the show of Riot Cabaret. There was if you watch the stream, I'm pretty sure there's a moment where James makes his entrance on that show where he points and goes, "Oh hey, that's to me," because he sees me in the corner of the audience, about a few pints deep at that point because it's London and it's expensive as anything. So it's also funny as well. If you watch that interview, he says like, "Oh, I would love to have international talent on the show." I'm like, "Oh, who would you like to have?" And he's like, I'll try to get somebody. Then Thunder Rosa comes out. I'm like, oh, you cheeky bastard. You couldn't have given me that scoop, could you? You couldn't have given me that scoop. But nonetheless, then met them again at Progress because they obviously announced their show for next year at that point. So, yeah, I'm definitely 100% hoping to have Riot Cabaret back on in the future on the Soul Sessions. It's probably one of the most fun UK promotions in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely loved it. And obviously, I've got a bit of backstory for mine as well. Is So originally it was meant to be obviously James, obviously himself, and then I think 10 minutes before the show, he says, "Oh, Sean's going to jump on." Obviously, he's the other owner. I'm like, "Okay, let's go with it." Do you know what I mean? And obviously, I do my shows live, and like I said, it's still one of my favorites, to this day. And the thing is, you mentioned it, obviously, long term things. Every single time I get speak to wrestlers and stuff, Riot Cabaret always came up. They're like, "Check out Riot Cabaret, check out Riot Cabaret," and I'm like, you know what? Exactly like you said. Who's the owners? Oh, it's James Lawrence, and then obviously I think it's Sean Thorne's the other one.
Yeah, I mean, they're great individuals. I've only ever really met James in person, but from what I can tell, the passion that these guys have behind it, they really care for what they're building. Obviously, the Clapping Grand is a fantastic venue, somewhere I would never have gone originally, but that show was packed all in weekend, and that was phenomenal. So I really can't wait to see what they do next year. I love what they did this year, and I love the other shows that they've done. Obviously, being in Scotland, I hate traveling down south. It's like a national pride sort of thing. You know what it is. But I'm very excited to see what they do next year. I will be having, for obviously Forbidden Door is coming over with AEW New Japan. I can 100% guarantee you I will be at the next Riot Cabaret show, hell or high water.
It's on my to-do list next year as well, so hopefully I might get to see you there.
We'll buy a pint. We'll have obviously we'll go 50-50 because the prices are bad. It's no good.
There you go. So we love all your interviews and stuff like that. What's some obviously ones you're actually really proud of, or like stories and stuff?
So I'll do this in two sections. So the ones I'm proud of, I'm really, really proud of obviously the subculture one, having Mark Andrews, Flash Morgan Webster, and Danny Luna. Like, never thought in my mind I would be able to achieve something like that. You know, so it's funny, again, it's a funny story because I know that the episodes connect in a weird way. Going back to season 1, I had James Ellis, who's the Combat Legacy champion of No Mercy, introduced me to No Mercy, and then interviewed Christopher Bevan, who's the owner of No Mercy. I had Bevan back on in my Road to 100 series, which was in season 3. And then I said to Bevan, I'm trying to get someone big for 100 because I have a thing with numbers. Like, I always feel like I should do something big when it's either 100 or 150 or so on and so on. So Bevan says, I can maybe get you 2 people. Let me work my magic. And then through Bevan, he got me Mark. So I was like, oh, shit, this is pretty damn big. Former NXT UK champion. Tag team champions. I was like, all right, okay, let's go. Interviewed Mark. Mark really liked it. I said to Mark, I would love to interview Flash. Would you ever be interested? He said, wait a minute. And then interviewed Flash. Flash sent me an email. I was like, all right, let's organize Flash on. I finished with Flash, and I was like, to Flash, I've had you and Mark on. Any chance of Danny? And then he was like, she's off to TNA. Maybe not. And then I got an email from Danny. He was like, let's organize something. I was like, oh, shit. So it's funny as well. So episode 100, Mark Andrews. 10 episodes later, Flash Morgan Webster 110. 10 episodes later, season 3 finale, Danny Luna. 10, 110, 120.
Crazy, man. And it's funny you mention that because every 10 episodes for me, I seem to interview a referee. I don't know how that works.
Keep up, mate. Keep up. That's what we like about it. But for Scottish scene as well, really happy to have interviewed Molly Spartan, somebody who's been synonymous with ICW. Jason Reed, he was a former ICW ZRG champion at the time, had him on. Building the stuff that I've done with obviously Community Pro, Attitude Pro, Bleeding Gums Wrestling, Power Pro has been fun as well. But probably the best story-wise is when I interviewed the former ICW Women's Champion and current Progress Women's Champion, Riho. Riho was on my show, and we talked about, obviously, she had dethroned Molly Spartan for the belt. And there was a whole story about them with the She-Wolves and how Molly Spartan had cut one of Rio's braids out of her hair and left Rio with a red braid to symbolize the story of that. Mm-hmm. And then she was like, oh, I'm sure Molly has that braid. I interviewed Molly down the line. I brought up the story. She goes, oh, hang on a minute. Runs away. Comes back with a jar with Rio's braid in it. I'm like, oh, shit. You have her hair. It's like, God damn, any other profession, that'd be weird. But wrestling, it just seems right. So it's funny that way. It's like if you watch those 2 episodes, the story comes back around of the story with the braid. They led into the ICW Women's Championship match. They led on to Rio becoming the longest ICW Women's Champion. It all connects.
It all connects. It definitely does. So I want to talk obviously a lot about the Scottish scene. Now, obviously, I've got Scottish friends, and the 2 people or the 2 names I hear a lot is Angel Hayes and BT Gunn.
Yes. Angel Hayes and BT Gunn, they are absolutely phenomenal talent. Obviously, BT Gunn really runs Iron Girders. Iron Girders is obviously run as well by Wolfgang, who's in NXT. he was obviously the husband of Molly Spartan. So they really developed the talent there. They've done really great things. There's also just a gym as well that people can access and train from. I know they've had people like Mark Haskins there, Jonathan Gresham there, and to teach the people there. I had Mark McAllister, who's someone who's really Iron Girders brought up. He had a losing streak for the longest time, then won the championship there. He's really became a man in himself. He's doing stuff with Community Pro with Ellie Armstrong as like the vegan duo. He's gone over and done stuff in Europe as well. So it's fascinating what they've really built there. And Angel Hayes really is, I think she's really one of the standout female talent in Scotland. If you look at cards, you're probably going to see her on it because she's one of the most talented workers. I know she's doing stuff with Shea Monet and ICW. So those two really are fascinating. I've seen BT wrestle in person. I've not seen Angel Hayes, but it was BT at I believe it was the Valor show. Yeah, it was a Valor show. And dude's ferocious. It was a freeway show actually that I worked with Bleeding Gums after Clash of the Castle Scotland, and the dude is immense. Like, he's powerful, he's hard hitting, and he's got aggression with him. So he is tough.
Absolutely, I've seen Angel Hayes obviously for Mega Slam, and the crowd reaction she gets, and it still baffles me how young she is and how long she's been wrestling.
That's the thing with Scottish wrestling in particular, is that there is a very high yield of youthful talent. A lot of teenagers, young adults. Some say that's bad, some say that's good. I see it as a 50-50 thing. You have talent that can then grow into young adult stars, but then again, not you know how teenagers and kids are. They're interested in one thing for 1 week and then ditch it the next. So you're going to have that double-edged sword. Wrestling's not made for everybody. Not everybody will get into it or stay long term with it. There will be people that will drop out of it through time to time. It's just how the business works. But Community Pro really are developing an own thing with themselves. Obviously, they have the shared roster with Attitude Pro Wrestling, run by the Wanderer. They have a connection with their fans. I feel like they know their place with like being family friendly and really catering to the community as well, because it's fascinating what they do as well. And there's a lot of, I can tell, fun talent there. So they're really building someone up with the youthful talent. But Scottish wrestling in itself, yeah, it's a fun place. It's a real fun place.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many names. I mean, another one which I've just thought about then is Moxie Malone. That's another one who's really sticking out for me as well.
Yeah, no, Moxie, obviously Iron Girders as well. She is very, very good as well. Really just another fascinating talent. I think that's the thing. The funny thing is, like, with Scottish wrestling, like, if you had to say to me, it's like, oh, Soul, describe it in one word. Generally, it's minefield. Because with Scottish wrestling, there's a lot of people work here, people work here. Some people stay in their own environment, some travel around to other places. But from what I've witnessed, minefield for me, if you're in Scottish wrestling and I say describe the scene in one word, minefield, you probably get it.
Yeah, exactly. Is there any other names people should look out for in the next coming years from basically Scotland overall?
Mate, you're trying to get me pulling up my Rolodex or something? Jesus, come on now! I'm going to be going through names for days. I mean, let's start on men's side. Omar Mohammed, somebody who's wrestled for Power Pro and done other stuff within FCW. He's an absolute phenomenal guy. Hunter Sampson, 6'7" guy, big as tall as shit. Holy crap. The Power, Ross Hunter and Robert Balfour, a very young tag team that have really cemented their roles after changing from the Woke Academy to now the Power. They've cemented their place. The Good Times with Discovery Wrestling of Rob Stowe and Monstrum. Judas Gray is kind of an unofficial member of that group. They've got amazing things going on. Judas Gray has the Discovery Wrestling Openweight Championship as well. Ronan King, he's another very young talent as well, but it's absolutely amazing. Somebody I've had on recently, Patty, 16-year-old teenage sensation, and he's doing like, what's that, moonsaults and all that. He's doing them off the top rope and all that at 16, and it's like, holy crap. There's so many. It's amazing that I've interviewed so many of them. Luke King Sharp as well, and Krieger, obviously Glasgow Grindhouse. Luke King's really doing his own stuff with Valor. Krieger, I feel like, could come in himself as a very big babyface as a solo act for whatever he does with other companies there. Female side, obviously Daisy Jenkins, somebody who's, I know Casey has said that she's the next generation of female talent within Scotland, and I 100% agree with that. Kate Calloway is coming up as a monster powerhouse heel within Scottish wrestling as well. You've got the likes of Ellie Armstrong, you've got your Nicole Jasmines, you've got like so many insane. Obviously, Ruby Roberts as well, somebody who's coming up. Like you've got such a. If you take all those people I've just mentioned and others as well, and threw them into like one big company with a roster, you would have so many diverse people with styles, moveset, presentations that you could really build feuds days and days upon.
Absolutely, absolutely, it's an incredible scene. So you mentioned obviously Bleeding Gums, and obviously that's the one thing company you work for. I've seen obviously a lot of your work backstage, and I'm really impressed. Talk a little bit about starting there.
Oh God, so to go back even further, I mentioned obviously the solo session starting in Wrestling Republic. There was a situation where I was dropped from the company and I had to go solo. So I was like, okay, building something solo. What can I do here? And that's when I immediately was like, all right, going into this, let's look at the wrestling outside my window and build my relationship with the Scottish scene. Interviewed a bunch of people. Bleeding Gums followed me one day, and I saw they were having their inaugural show in Edinburgh. Edinburgh's really easy for me to get to. I was like, smashing. Interviewed them, talked about it. I was like, hey, I know you have your debut show. Do you ever need an in-person interviewer if I could just help out? He's like, sure, mate, come along, see what we can do. I was like, oh, I'll just buy a ticket because I don't know, if things go, I can just stay and watch the show. Came around the show, met the talent through the back, and they were like, Andy, the owner, is very much a guy that is like, I trust you. I know you're good at what you can do. Just go do it, whether your talent backstage or whatever. So I was like, all right, I know the way the matches are working. Let's go and develop something there. Interviewed people at the show like Davey Blaze and Alton Thorne and Jack Harab, Tomby and Radu Blatt as well. And that in-person work was the first ever time I've done that, and I really, really enjoyed it. And then they had their Lust for Death tournament coming up, which was their next show afterwards. I believe it was. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And they were like, hey, we want you to come. Andy was like, I want you to come back, be a part of it. Interviewed him again on my show, talking about the show, hyping it up. Did Lust for Death. Lust for Death was quite busy, so I only ever did one interview, which was the introduction you'll see on the show with Alton Thorne arriving to the arena. And I was like, all right, okay, that's fine. But kept up a relationship with Andrew and just chatting all that and having a good conversation about wrestling and life in general. Ice and Wire, the show after that, I was in Mexico, so I couldn't do it. We had a little talk. I was like, I wish I was at the show. He's like, fuck off, mate. You're in Mexico. Shut up. I'm only married. You can't talk shit. Came back, did their Double Death Day show, which I got a lot of great stuff out of that. The one I'm proud of the most is obviously the Alton Thorne one, where he grabs my tie and cements him as the new champion. I love that interview. Then Liquid Filth happened, and that's probably my best in-person work, because I did the likes of Skull Brawl, I did Ian Skinner, I did Alton Thorne, I did Veronica and Tomby. It's like there's a variations of it. Some of it's like a stand side talk and talk. There's one where it's like a comedy aspect with the Skull Brawl one, where I come in the side and I get stapled in the tie. The Veronica and Tomby one's very like edgy, realistic look, where it seems like I grab the camera person. I'm like, I'm trying to get the answers. I don't get any answers. And then I'm just like, all right, just go. And the camera ducks down. You hear Veronica shrieking. So it has that streetwise element to it. But yeah, the Bleeding Gum stuff is fascinating. They've got their Life Will Kill You tour in 2025, which I will be a part of every show as long as work doesn't bite me in the ass. But I'm planning to be there for every show.
Awesome. So before we obviously do our final stretch, obviously of the interview and stuff, I want to turn your attention over to the Hot Tag Foundation. We're obviously big supporters and stuff like that. The annual Toy Rumble's still going ahead. I mean, I'm not quite sure when it's ended. Just before Christmas, I believe.
Just before Christmas, I believe it's the 22nd.
Yeah, it's roughly something like that. So just give you guys a little insight. Got a little clip to play. This is where you can find all the information.
You said I couldn't, but I'm standing tall. You doubted every move, but now I got it all. Rise up.
I think we'll both agree that's an incredible job foundation. We're obviously big supporters and stuff like that. I've met these guys in person. I've had the guys on the show. Do you know what I mean? I just absolutely love what they're doing.
No, likewise as well. And I met the whole team down at All In Weekend. I've had them on the show. I even donated an NXT tag team replica belt for the raffle we did, where we raised over like 150 quid for the charity. So I'm very pleased with what they've done. They're a great element within wrestling in itself, and that's something we need.
Absolutely. So for people obviously listening, go check out Hot Tag Foundation, the Instagram page. All the information's on there. Do you know what I mean? incredible foundation. And as it says in the clip, you've just got to reach out, right?
Oh, 100%, brother.
Absolutely, absolutely. So a few little more things obviously begin to wind down and stuff like that. I mean, you've done so many great interviews, man. Do you know what I mean? You've incredible stuff like that. I've seen your work. What's next, man? Do you know what I mean? What's next for you?
Oh, that's the thing. A break would be nice, but I don't do breaks. It's because I'm stupid, and I'm just like, I just run myself into the ground. But a lot of things are coming next. Over the Christmas period, I've got a lot lined up. I've got episodes in the bank. I've got guests booked in for January. I'm generally a kind of guy that doesn't like to announce things ahead of time in case cancellations or things happen, but I'll give it away for you, Liam and the Magic of Wrestling podcast. I will break my rule and I'll announce some guests in the future. Mark Andrews, the Riot Cabaret World Champion, will be coming back on the show in January. As well will be a reappearance by the villain Marty Scurll. Marty will be coming back on the Soul Sessions as well to talk about his Villain World Tour. Obviously his Hire Marty hashtag that he started and plans for the villain, but as well obviously the Soul Sessions collection, another sub-sized series, will be continuing as well. I've got tons of gear from wrestlers that have been on the show. A lot of it's crazy stuff. I can't believe I own it, but it's here. But yeah, I'm going to be changing the studio out as well. I have new belts to put in the lineup. Obviously, I have Progress, 2 TNTs, NXT UK Tag, my beautiful, beautiful AEW World Championship in the corner. But yeah, I've got some belts on the way. One's actually in the corner. I've got one that I bought today, which represents, because generally I like to do it. I like to display the belts of guests that I've had. But obviously, you've not had anyone from who's the TNT champion AEW. I like AEW. What shoot me. Sorry. I like the belts. But I've had the NXT UK tag obviously for Subculture, Progress World Champions for like Mark Andrews, and obviously Scurll who've held a belt. But yeah, I've got a lot lined up I'm dedicated to do. Although things will be changing for the Soul Sessions actually with season 5. As I mentioned, I really love stories. I love stories. What is it that wrestling podcasts and interview shows don't really have? A story. Now, some people will say, well, you're podcasters, you're interviewers, you really aren't meant to be acts. You aren't really to be characters. And that's a fair point. But I feel in my mind, if you do something for so long and you become comfortable with it, you don't challenge yourself to become something new, break out the mold. So with my season 5, I will be doing a full, clean reinvention of this show, where I will be donning a new outfit. I will be becoming a new individual. This will transition over to Bleeding Gums Wrestling as well, which I can confirm here as well. I have a mask. I have an outfit ready. I have presentation ready. The mask is actually in the corner, which I won't show because it will be getting customized. But imagine like this. The character of Soul, which is what I am, will be changing into a trifecta of personalities from Dexter, House, and V for Vendetta.
I just thought alter ego for some reason.
Why not?
Alter ego, stuff like that. So, one final question before we all say enough, because I know obviously you're a busy guy and stuff like that. For people obviously who's thinking, obviously getting into podcasting and stuff like that, like we are, what advice would you give to them?
So, the way I approached the Soul Sessions in the beginning with season 1 was just trying to get as big international names as I can. And generally, that was the wrong idea to go about. With what I started with my season 3, which allowed me to do so many things and work for Bleeding Gums and do stuff for Power Pro and become acquainted with people in the scene, is know what's outside your very window. You know, I'm from Scotland. I should know about the Scottish wrestling scene. I know about the Scottish wrestling scene now. I've interviewed so many people within it. There's other people I can do. There's other people that I would like to do. Some people that don't want to do it, and that's fine. But generally, even if it's particularly for wrestling, it's knowing what's out of your window. If you're from London, you mainly want to focus on people that are appearing on Riot Cabaret, Progress, and RevPro. If you're from Wales, you want to focus on people from New Wave, No Mercy, Chaos, and Attack. If you're from Northern Ireland, OTT, people that have studied under the likes of Finn Balor and Becky Lynch, JD McDonough, you want to try and focus on that. You're from Texas or whatever, try and focus on the local scenes outside of that. Now, if it's not wrestling, you want to become a gaming podcast, what I would say is focus on the consoles that you play. Don't just pull out a Commodore 64 and think you know it all and like, I'm going to focus on this. It's really in the past. It's cool and retro. No. You play the PlayStation, focus on the PlayStation's history from the PS1 to the PS2, the PS3, the PS4, and the PS5. Focus on the PSP for all I know, because I love the PSP and I really am annoyed that didn't still around. Boo. It's know your element and know your passion that you want to do. Like, Jenny, I've tried to quit the Soul Sessions 3 times because of burnout or I've not been happy with it. I tried to quit season 1, tried to quit when I departed Wrestling Public. I tried to quit at episode 100 after Mark Andrews. Like, I've done 100. I don't know if I want to do it now. But then there's times where, like, you probably know yourself, and you could send out 50 interview requests and you can maybe even get one scene. Like, like that's it. That's just how it goes. Like, there's people that I've said, like, oh, interview this person. Generally, trust me, I've tried I once had, I won't name the wrestler. I once had a wrestler from the States who wanted $400 for 30 minutes.
What the hell?
I'm like, respectfully, I know you have the big name, but I'm not doing that. And that's fine. Some people will pay. I've paid money for interviews. I've paid $250 is the most I've ever paid for an interview, but it was an interview that I think was worth it. With the person's time and what happened within their career at the moment, I think it was worth it. What would happen with that $250? Hey, wrestling isn't the most lucrative job sometimes. Sometimes you get injured, you can't earn money, you have to rely on merch. And if I can give that to somebody, hey, I'm happy with that. That's cool with me. And I would probably just spend it on booze anyway. So, I mean, it's not really going to a good cause. But it's always knowing your role and your place and what you want to do and what you want to develop. Like as well with the Soul Sessions collection, like I have Danny Luna's jacket from Impact Wrestling sitting in the corner. Like, not many people can just say, oh yeah, I have Danny Luna's jacket in the corner. I have Mark Andrews tights from NXT UK. I have Flash Morgan Webster's tights from NXT UK. I've got, what else do I have? I have August Artois' gear that he used in Control Your Narrative. I've got Ashley Vega's Discovery Wrestling debut gear. I've got a folding chair that was used in a death match that was used by 2 of my guests. So it's ways to give back to the industry and have fun with it. And that's the thing I think with, not only just wrestling in general. It's knowing when to have the main fun with it. And that's why, I dress the way I do. That's why I sweat so much in this thing when it's like 300 degrees in this studio right now, because how many people do it, and just a wrestling shirt that they've not worn since 2010 because they really like CM Punk and they can't be bothered washing the Best in the World shirt. You have to kind of enjoy and look the part. It's like, I've been told I'm the best dressed man in wrestling podcasting. I'm like, okay, that's a fun moniker. I'll take it. It's fun with me. But it's showing that if you have a wrestler come on and, you haven't looked like you shaved in 10 days, your hair's manky, they can tell that you've dyed it because your roots are showing, and you've got this manky shirt on with some stains from your breakfast, they immediately can tell, this person doesn't want to put effort into their presentation. I don't know how this will go. But, I'm not trying to blow smoke up my own behind, but I dress to show the part. It's a look, it's a waistcoat, shirt, tie, and a long jacket. I could wear a full-on suit, but I feel like this makes it a bit more unique. And then when you see me at shows doing the interviews and all that, it's an interesting look. I used to do it in a leather jacket with a normal shirt underneath, and that was very easy. Sometimes you see me wearing an AW shirt, or you will see me wearing other shirts like that just to make it easy and convenient. It was so easy to put on. But this takes a bit more effort, but it shows that I care about what I do with the Soul Sessions. I put the effort in with my presentation. This year as well, I've done season 4 as well. It's the first time I've had an intro. After 120 episodes, I finally have an intro. I have an outro now. Got major thanks as well to Robert Chaos, Red Light, Green Light track as my intro, and Scottish Fijian band, Emerald Overload, their debut track Animals, which I was at the launch party for. I think it's a banger. I asked them if I can use it. We made a contract. Now it's the outro song for the Soul Sessions. And music is a big part of it as well. That's why I do it with advertising. If you go on my channel and see if I guest appears, I'll have a song that connects with them. It might be their intro song, or it might be a song that they really like, or it might be a song that speaks to what their character is feeling at the moment. It's always important to connect music with people. I love music. I like to go, heck, my Spotify rap was 40,000 minutes listened to this year. So, I like to listen and find some of the crazy things that I do. That's like with the Soul Sessions itself. Every season, if you've been listening for a long time, has a song to it. The debut season is by Never Say Never by Samurai, which was a song that I would use to introduce things or announce things. Season 2 was Seasons by, I think it was, I can't remember the name of the band, but it's called Seasons. And then season 3, it was This Fire Burns by Franz Ferdinand, because it was, I wasn't with Wrestling Republic at the time, and it kind of symbolizes that my fire still burns for this project. Now, my season 4 theme was is Tonight by Sunset Neon. Very upbeat, very like, tonight's the night for the show sort of elements to it. So it's always building upon that as well. And I think that's the real fun thing with it as well. I mean, I'm sure, Liam, you already know all this yourself, but I mean, like, presentation as well. It's the main thing. Like, I really like the magic thing about that. I really like the playing cards. I like the whole presentation. You've got the logo. It's a good look.
Did anybody actually? I don't think I've ever actually shared the story where the Magic of Wrestling name comes from. Actually,
oh, do tell, please.
So when I was obviously younger, I used to do Magic as a hobby. So and obviously, as you get older and stuff like that, work takes over and stuff like that. So and when I started the podcast up, I'm like, well, what if I combine the two, the Magic of Wrestling? Do you know what I mean? Because I mean, Magic is wrestling. Do you know what I mean? Do you know that's the way I feel it when I'm watching stuff, Joe. You feel the magic, you feel the passion, you feel like the investment, and stuff like that. So yeah, it actually stems from obviously my hobby, which I did when I was younger. Never told that story, by the way.
Hey, well, sometimes the interviewer becomes the interviewee. We flip it up. Sometimes we have fun with that as well. But I think as well with especially wrestling interviewing, like I'm sure we know this as well. You can send out so many interview requests and maybe get one back. A lot of it's just timing. You might catch somebody on a day where they're checking their Instagram. I know this especially with female talent. They like to have their DMs off because they get creepy weirdos, and that's fully fine. You just have to sift through all the shit to finally get to the goal. But yeah, I feel like with the Soul Session as well, I am proud of what I've done and the work I've done. I'm very much a person that doesn't like to go back and watch my old stuff. Just a personal preference. I just don't like watching myself. It's a thing. But I know that there's people that I met a fan of the show actually at Clash of the Castle Scotland. And to be fair, I was quite pissed at the time. But they came up to me and was like, oh, I really love your stuff and all that. Your Soul Sessions, aren't you? I was like, oh, it's me when I'm slurring my words and trying not to drop my 350 pint. But that's humbling. Like, I've been recognized, and it's weird. It's weird for me of just being like, people know me for doing this and being a part of professional wrestling, which is, it's just weird. Like, I never thought something that I watched at my second year at university would actually become such a big part of my life and a real dent in my bank account with all the belts I bought.
So one final question, obviously, like I said, I know you're a busy guy and stuff like that. What's the one thing that obviously interviews taught you as a person?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Really, really breaking over the barriers here, bringing the shell out. Interviews taught me as a person that I'm actually really good at it. That's the main surprising thing of it, that people have told me, like, you're really good at this. You have a good format. You're able to talk well. Like, a little peeling back the curtains here. As somebody who was like an introvert for all their teenage years, didn't go out, just stayed in their room, played video games, didn't really talk to people, not until maybe like hitting university and college and finally coming out of that shell of now being somebody that's talking to people that have been in WWE, AEW, TNA, being a part of TNA's media press, getting to talk to PCO and Speedball Mike Bailey, interviewing the co-owner of Progress and being a VIP guest to Progress chapter after All In, working Bleeding Gums Wrestling, knowing the people there, working shows. Like, if I was that person and I told my younger self, hey, you're going to go work a show with 500 people there and you're going to talk to talent and you're going to get stapled in the chest by a Viking guy and a guy who looks like a Lost Boy, I would look at myself and be like, I've turned into an alcoholic. Cool. This is what introvertness has done to me. But I'm doing it, and that's just the crazy aspect of it, that it's not only just helped me in interviewing, but like personal life as well. I'm a big jokester guy. Like I just like to make people laugh. Like, I've made you laugh a good amount of times, and I'm like, I've done my job. I'm happy with that. I like to do that. Like, Christ, I flew over to North Carolina for Sting's last match at Revolution this year. Like, if you told me I did that, you're going to fly yourself on your own to a connecting fight to Newark, to then go to North Carolina, stay in a hotel by yourself for one day just to go see a wrestling show, and then fly all the way back and deal with the jet lag. I'd have been like, stupid. Never would have done that. But like, you did it. It's like, holy shit. you stood to that and like did that. I was like, yeah. Now I want to travel. Now I want to go places. Now I want to go do things. I want to go to another AEW event. I've been to 2 Revolutions. The one show, like I know they do more now, but I always look at the original 4 of AEW. I want to go to a Full Gear. Full Gear is the one I want to go to above a Double or Nothing or All Out. Like Full Gear is the one to me. I love the aesthetic of it. I love the previous ones in the past. I've always enjoyed seeing Hangman Page versus Kenny Omega is one of my favorite matches. I love that match. I love the whole history behind it. I want to go to a Full Gear. That's the one thing I want to do. And as well, I want to see Kenny Omega wrestle in a singles match once in my life because I've only seen him in a trios match. It's annoying. I want to see him in a single match. Can you single Kenny and Okada? Come on, for God's sake.
You never know. Forbidden Door.
Don't make it like if I get Kenny Omega versus Kazuchika Okada in the UK, I don't have to travel, no flights, no jet lag, just deal with English people and pint prices. I'll take that loss. I'll take that loss 100%. I'm blessed to do what I do, and I really don't think I have any plans of slowing down. The one thing I do hope, though, I hope this whole character change and presentation of the Soul Sessions I do change, which I'll happily announce to here for you first, Liam, will be after episode 200. Season 4 will end with 200. After 200, I plan to do this whole character change thing. Here's the thing. If it doesn't work, I can at least say I've tried it. I'll do it for a couple of episodes, see if it works with the presentation. If people don't click with it, I'll have the character trip, break their neck, and then I just walk in like, oh, well, that was stupid. Right, back to old shebang. Or like that episode of Dallas where like they had a character die for a whole season and he woke up in the shower. I'm like, I'll do that. That'll be fun.
This has been an absolute insightful chat, so do you know what I mean? I'm so glad you've been on the show, man. I hope you've had a blast.
Mate, 100%. I like. Sadly, from a guy who didn't like to meet people and talk, I can't shut my fucking mouth now. So it's kind of a fun change of correction. But I'm happy to come back on here, Liam, anytime you want. Talk about anything. I'll happily show off the Soul Sessions collection. I'll show off the new belts I'll be here. I'll show the new studio change in 2025. Hopefully things go plans and more guests will be coming on. I can't wait to have Mark Andrews back on, talk about his Riot Cabaret World Championship win. Yeah, it's going to be something special. I mean, I love it.
Absolutely. So before obviously head off and stuff like that, my man, is there anything you'd like to plug yourself?
Oh, the plugs. I do like the plugs. Obviously, you can see down there at the Soul Sessions Official is the Instagram. There is an X. There's a TikTok. I just have it so I can take the names. I don't like using other platforms. I'm dedicated to the one Instagram and the YouTube. I don't need more on my plate. I like to divert my time to other things. You know, I love video games. That's where my other time goes to. And work, because I have to pay for all this somehow. But yeah, obviously the Soul Sessions Official, you can see the Soul Sessions itself, all the previous interviews from the last 4 seasons. The Soul Sessions collection is on there, the Instagram page, where you see the guest collection gear from Mark Andrews, Danny Luna, Flash Morgan Webster, Lou Nixon, Brett Semtex, Legends Never Die, the chair that will be coming up as well. Hunter Sampson's gear will also be on there as well. I will also be making that a video series as well in 2025. That's something to also diversify the portfolio. So that'll be, again, another bit of work on my plate. I'm always happy to do it. Next thing, obviously, from Bleeding Gums, their Life Will Kill You tours in 2025. Check out the Bleeding Gums Wrestling Instagram page, website, where you can see where the tours are up. I'll be at the shows. Also, Wrestling Republic, I'm actually going to be on their Wrestling Republic Daily broadcast in 10 minutes. That's where I will be. We'll be discussing some topics there, but you can see me on Wrestling Republic with the guys there, like Clark Taylor, Shad, Ben Allison, Anthony Ricciardi, all the great guys there. They're a great group of guys. Happy to be with them again and doing some fun stuff in the professional wrestling world.
Absolutely. So before we hit our outro, any final words before we hit the outro?
I need another fucking pint, but I don't have any beer, so I'm pissed off now.
Roll the outro.